Welcome to Generation Truth Podcast with Carey and Rebekah Charles,
where we declare the Lord is good, His mercy is everlasting, and His truth endureth to all generations.
The title of the episode today is You Belong to God and Not the Crowd.
2 Corinthians 6:17 says, Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you.
You know, it's so important that we, as we talked about in the last episode, really stand out for Jesus. We stand up for Jesus, as the song says over and over again. Do you stand up for Jesus in your family? Do you stand up for Jesus in your household or your work atmosphere or your church or in your school? Are you a shining light for Jesus Christ? Over and over again, the Word of God talks about this. It says in Romans 12:2 that we are not to be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God.
I love that verse because it really gets to the heart of the issue. If you're not walking with the Lord, if your mind, if your affections are not wanting to walk with Him and to be different, you're not going to be different. So it starts in your heart and your mind, and
absolutely
having that desire to, all right, yes, I'm saved, but God calls us to be more than saved. He calls us to be set apart or sanctified unto Him.
And you might say, well, Carey, I'm not old enough to do that. I don't know how to say all those right things that the preacher talks about. 1 Timothy 4:12 says, let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, in purity.
I love the emphasis that God gives to the youth, that we do matter, that you do matter, and that you do have pull, and that you do have influence.
Yeah.
And here, that list gives, and all of these things, that word conversation is not like talking, but it means a way of life. Well, that is all encompassing. It isn't just at the lunch table and then I can act how I want on the sports field. No, it's your way of life. You are to be an example in every way of your life. And the next verse here that we have, it's hard. Man, I want to make my friends happy, my mom and dad happy, my teachers happy, but it seems I can't make everyone happy all at once. Galatians 1:10 says, but for do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I yet please men, I should not be the servant of Christ. We can only serve one person at a time. So it's either we're trying to please God or men. That's it.
And I can truly say, as a people pleaser growing up, that is exactly the way that I was. I don't know how I can please everybody. I'm trying to take care of this person, take care of that person, and take care of that person. And you know what? You cannot please everybody. You just cannot do that. And when you're living for that, you're going to live frustrated. And when you don't meet the goal that you have, you're going to be frustrated with yourself. And you're like, I just can't do this. Well, you're right. You can't. And that's when you need to get your focus on Christ, because we're to serve Christ. And as you serve Christ, God will help you to serve others the way that He wants you to serve others.
And the really neat thing is, as we are persuaded in our hearts, our minds, our affections to please God, everything else will fall into place. Now, I did not say that everyone will be happy, but all the right people, all the godly people in our life will naturally be pleased with you, because they're obviously wanting you to please the Lord as well. And then if I please God, I don't have to worry about everyone else.
Yes. And honestly, I love what you just did there. You took a sigh of relief, because when all you're focusing on is Christ, it takes the pressure off, because you realize God sees you. He knows your heart. He knows your motivations. And yes, it's kind of scary in a sense, but at the same time, it's very comforting to know that you don't have to try to put on some show. You just need to be you and be like Jesus. And so we actually want to give examples of this. Some biblical examples of this would be like Daniel.
Yes. Oh, he's the top, I guess, example other than a perfect man of Jesus. That is Daniel, refused to eat the king's meat. Now, this was not a spur of the moment decision, right? He's in a really worldly place, pulled from his home, had things done to him that we can't even discuss right here because it's so grotesque and horrible. Obviously, Daniel was not in a good place in his life, but yet, in Daniel 1:8, it says, but Daniel purposed where? in his heart,
Yeah.
that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat. Of course, you're like, big deal, it's meat. Back then, the Jews had certain laws put in place that he knew he was not allowed to eat meat. And nobody was there that he knew. There was this strange land. How easy would it have been for him to just say, none of that matters anymore.
Could have gotten away
God
with it.
has, or he did this to me. I'm not going to do this any longer. And he could have done what he wanted, but it started in his heart. He purposed ahead of time to not defile himself or to go with the crowd. Because I'm sure all the other people that were kidnapped with him did that, right? So obviously he couldn't even depend on his friends. He purposed alone to not defile himself with the king's meat.
Yeah, I mean, he had Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego with him, but imagine there was so many other people that got taken. Their names were not mentioned, only those 4. And so that's why it's so important for us not to get your name mentioned, but to realize that, hey, we can do this. Other men of God have done this, and women of God have done this. We can follow Jesus as well. And speaking of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they literally refused to bow down to an idol or a statue.
Mm-hmm. Now, Daniel is not mentioned in this passage, but those 3, at least they had one another, but just imagine they would stick out like a sore thumb when those instruments played and everybody bowed down.
Thousands
and
of people.
There's 3 men standing. Obviously, it's going to be super, super clear that they disobeyed the king's commandment. It took courage. It took bravery. And thankfully, they had each other. But, what bravery against the pressure to go along with the crowd, just obey the king.
Yeah,
well,
you talk about peer
God
pressure,
sees
man.
my heart. He knows I'm not really bowing down. No, they were not willing to cower.
Yeah.
They took an outward stand for what they knew was right.
Yes. And you know what? I know some people that they do these kinds of things, maybe not like that, but they'll stand out for Jesus in their walk with God. A lot of times they do it in a prideful way as, look at me. But these guys did not do that. They did this because this is what God had called them to do, not for them to be seen. They're literally about to be tossed into a fire. And they would have given their lives for the cause of Christ, except for the fact that Christ came in to the fire with them and saved them physically.
Yeah.
And so that's just, when you're living for Jesus, you realize that you belong to him, not the crowd.
One other more negative example, there was a young man in the Old Testament in 2 Samuel chapter 13, and he had a very impure, lustful desire, and he was trying to
act on it in a way that he should not have to.
Well, right, and he was trying to finagle a way to appease his lustful desire, and were it not for his actually cousin, Amnon. No.
Yes. Amnon's cousin showed him a way to be able to do this. Yeah.
Yes. Then he would not have acted on that desire, but it was his friend who said, hey, this is the way you do it. This is the way you can appease your lustful desire. And he did it.
Yeah. And it ended up, that action literally split the royal family of David.
Right,
I mean, his sons were completely split, and therefore David's heart was split, and he ends up having his son turn against him later on as a result of that one sin.
Yeah, so
important that it's so important that we, like we talked about in the last episode, surround ourselves with godly relationships. You know, peer pressure can work both ways, by the way. I want to ask you this question. If you're listening today, how are you using your influence, positively or negatively? It's so important that we make sure that we're being influencers for Christ, not in a negative way, but in a godly way.
Right, and a way that can help you be a positive or negative influencer is to look at who is influencing you.
Absolutely. And so look at these examples in the Bible and look at those around you. Make sure that you're surrounding yourself with those godly relationships, and make sure that you're getting into the scriptures, getting into the truth, and diving in and to see, you know what, do an eval. Am I truly following the crowd? Do I belong to the crowd, or do I belong to Christ? If I'm saved, I belong to Christ, and I'm not to act like the crowd. I am to act like Jesus. And remember, you're not alone. God honors obedience even when it's difficult, okay? Being salt and light is part of our calling as Christians, and God stands with those who stand for him. So let's get to know, once again, the one who is truth, so we can live the truth, so we can give the truth.
Because God's truth endureth to all generations.